Hello and welcome to Macon Atlanta, where we are in conversation with Atlanta innovators and community builders. I'm your host, Brent Macon. Today's conversation is with civil rights author Gene Kansas. And today's episode is perfect for anyone who cares about the birthplace of the civil rights movement, the sweet Auburn district in Atlanta, and also wants to learn from Gene's example about what it looks like to really follow a passion project and bring it to life. He's written a book with a ton of nuance and depth. It is a real artifact and a gem for Atlanta. So enjoy the episode with Gene. Thank you for listening. Cool. So I'll clap us in so we can align the audio and the visual. And then the way we do this is we typically record 75-ish minutes, however long kind of feels good. And then we'll try to trim down to 30, 35, 40. Yeah. And what that means is like we can go down random wormholes, alleyways. We can come back. You can get midway through an answer and be like, let's not do that one. And we can kind of come back and try it again. And it doesn't have to be like the whole thing is performative.
That sounds good. I might borrow your book from time to time.
Yeah.
But keep it there.
Yeah. Civil rights, for those watching. Anyway, thank you for taking the time and just prioritizing being here. And it's fitting. This is about a lot of Atlanta's modern roots. And I want to ask about yours to start. And when I think about Gene, I think about entrepreneur, real estate developer, storyteller, radio host. Now we can add author to the mix. I'm curious, how did that come about? And was there an order in which you knew those were going to be the things that you pursued professionally?
Well, thanks for having me. And thanks for being here. We're in the North Star Library at Constellations in Sweet Auburn. For better or for worse, I've kind of just like gone with what feels right. And I'm okay with making change. And although as a kid, I was interested in stories and I was interested in writing. And I'll try to share some that I haven't shared on, with other outlets. As I'm going to guess 10-year-old, like you mentioned, entrepreneur comes to mind when you think about me. I've always been an entrepreneur. And there was a business plan competition. And to be competitive, I decided that I would start a business. And I started a publishing company. And then to be more competitive, I decided to write and self-publish a book. I did not win the business plan competition. The book, though, did help me win a job at Turner as a content developer. And then also later at Atlanta Magazine, which was great. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think you kind of are who you are.
Yeah. And so did you come to Atlanta post-grad, and then have you been here since?
Yeah. So, again, like I'd mentioned a moment ago, how I've kind of gone with what has felt right. And sometimes it's been like, I feel like having Mexican for dinner, right? Or something like superficial in a way. And sometimes it's been major life decisions based on a whim. And so when I was a junior in high school, me and some buddies did a road trip to Birmingham to see Guns N' Roses. And it was a lot of fun. And then we parlayed that into a Braves game. This was in, I guess, 1990 or so. And saw a game at Fulton County Stadium, had a great time, decided I was moving to Atlanta, junior in high school. And I also got to do a trip through Atlanta with my father because we had gone to see the Talladega 500. And there's so many people at this thing that there's not a hotel room or a motel room or any type of room anywhere close. We ended up staying in Atlanta and we drove through. And my first kind of Atlanta memory with my dad was driving down Ponce de Leon and seeing a Krispy Kreme donut and then going and getting one. And so I did end up moving here after college, but I had decided to move here when I was a junior in high school.
Yeah, I came the year I graduated from college, and also have the early Braves game memory with my dad, and my brother, driving up to watch Greg Maddux pitch.
Oh, nice.
So mine was a little later. Yeah,
that's a good one. And now you have a baby here.
Yeah, but
you have an Atlantan.
It's true.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Well, so how long have you all been here?
I came in 2012.
Yeah. So you're here at an amazing time. I mean, when I moved here in 95, it was incredible. It was wide open. The Olympics were about to be here. It was starting to really be quite the international city, with CNN, Coca-Cola, the big businesses, the airport. And at the same time, it was still relatively small, like a small town type of feel. You could go meet anyone. It was really accessible in that way. And I think that it has remained accessible in that way. And I mean, if someone has the interest and some patience, you can meet just about anyone you want in Atlanta. There's a Southern hospitality component to that. The other thing, though, is like right now in time, I think that it is the first time since when I moved here that it's felt wide open again. And I think that has a lot to do with a lot of things. You have big business. It's obviously very international. It's diverse. It's that the schools and colleges here are incredible. You have a huge technology community here. You have the film industry, which is coming back, right? There's a little bump in the road there with the strike. You've got all kinds of different like food and beverage and dining options. You've got the Beltline. You've got, parks and green space. You have people going out there and sharing what others are doing here like yourself. And that's wide open. You can do anything here right now.
Let's talk about Civil Sites, the inspiration for writing the book and how it fits alongside the real estate company that you have built, and journalism, storytelling, a part of your career DNA.
Right.
When did this project come to you? When did it become inevitable to the point that you were definitely going to bring it into the world?
Well, I think that there are some moments where it's like pretty obvious and I can talk about those. And then I think that there are also a lot of other moments that as I think back on them, I'm like, oh yeah, that was probably a contributing factor. Like working for Atlanta Magazine for that matter. Starting a publishing company in college, I think probably helped. Being an entrepreneur and caring about and being inspired by entrepreneurs. I mean, my kind of icon entrepreneurs, and by the way, even having a degree in entrepreneurship, I am 100% convinced that you do not have to start a business to be an entrepreneur. It's a spirit. And I will get to the point of like what I think are a few defining moments that were true, like, oh, that's a catalyst for Civil Sites. But preservation, I mean, defined as conservation, protection, and care. So that's pretty broad. It's also pervasive. Like the focus of our work at my company is around historic preservation. But having my radio show for 5 years and interviewing 180, almost maybe 190 different people, and then understanding that the true value was not necessarily the episode and like how many people listen to it or how many people subscribe or how many people do whatever, but it is this is a recordation of history of two people and their voice. And you just had a son, right? Mm-hmm. Your son's going to be really happy that he can go listen to you later.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't put some type of like price on that. There's an extreme level of value though. And anyway, so preservation is, do you care? Are you willing to protect it? And will you conserve it? But it was when I started to really dig into and understand the history of the daily world building that I realized how rich and important and impactful that history is, and that it was not exclusive to that building. It is every building in the Sweet Auburn Historic District, which since 1976 has lost almost 50% of its historic structures. And that, if you really think about that, like by the time your son gets to be my age, if we continue at that trajectory, there'll be no visible and conspicuous evidence of the birthplace of the civil rights movement. Like, who wants that for their kids? Because it's not just the buildings, it's what buildings represent. And so that was really a major moment I can point to as a catalyst. I was just on a tear after that and going and researching all different types of buildings. And I was like, yeah, I need to write a book about this. And that's Civil Sites.
Really cool.
Long-winded, but good.
Yeah, and
fun.
A bunch of offshoots, questions, but your focus on historic preservation as being relatively central to your business, is that a point of differentiation that leads your business to do better? Do you feel like you are probably leaving money on the table because you're taking on historic preservation projects that maybe don't have the same market potential as some of the commercial redevelopment? Or is it something that's kind of your unique calling card? Like, how do you see that fitting in just from a commercial lens even?
Well, depending on the state that someone's operating in, there can be a huge financial advantage to doing historic preservation. I mean, the historic tax credit specifically, there's no way we could have done the Daily World building without a historic tax credit. You don't have to do what I do as a business in buying a building and doing a historic rehabilitation, which is a technical term for like improvements, repairs. You don't have to go get a bank loan. You don't have to get you don't have to work with a contractor. You don't have to worry about tariffs. These are things where a lot of things have to come together. Inflation, interest rates, all these things have to kind of work together to be able to do a project in commercial real estate. But if you're an artist and you want to paint a mural, the barrier to preservation for that, maybe it might cost something, obviously, and it takes your time and talent. It's also like only limited by your own personal passion and or purpose. So on the side of the Daily World building right now, you can see a mural called the District 5 Honor Mural, which features Rosalind Pope. Rosalind Pope was one of the original scouts in District 5. District 5 was Atlanta's first Black Girl Scout troop. They were located in the Daily World building in 1944. And by sharing the story, just like you share stories here, you are creating a connection that establishes a value that is motivating for people to take action. So in reality, you also are a preservationist, Brent.
I'll take that.
Yeah. And so like, if someone can go out and like take a picture of that mural and share it, they are contributing to the preservation of rights. That's what that mural is about. Women's rights, civil rights, human rights, Black history. So I'm saying this because it doesn't have to be about money. It can be about personal passion and interest. Song, dance, theater, etc. A book.
Yeah. And if someone's listening to this and they haven't read the book yet, some of what Gene's already sharing, you'll get a flavor for. There is so much in this book. And my notes, one of the things that I wrote was, how did you do this?
Yeah.
The level of richness and nuance and depth and facts in this book are astounding. And you've mentioned my son a couple of times. We've been sitting there, my wife will be feeding him and I'll just be reading her a couple paragraphs. And I'm like, I don't know how Gene did this.
Well, thank you. It was difficult.
Yeah. Can you talk about your process?
Yes.
What did you mix of primary, secondary? Did you have a team? How long did this take? I got a bunch of questions.
Yeah,
there.
It was a lot of work. It was worth it. It is worth it. And for one, doing something alone in a vacuum is not that much fun. And there's no way I could have ever done this book alone. I have 4 different editors for the book. The book, it took 8 years. For one, I'm a really slow reader and I had to read a lot. Like somewhere between 10 and 12,000 pages to only write 234. During that time is when I quickly realized within the first probably 100 pages the exclusionary nature of history. Women are excluded from history. You're a smart person, an educated person, and so are your listeners. I would bet, though, that most people hearing this would be hard-pressed to name more than 3 women in the civil rights movement. And it's not our fault. They have been excluded from history. They're literally hiding in history. So I decided right then and there to change the focus of this to be about not just women, but any unknown, unsung, underrepresented hero and heroine of the movement. But anyway, 4 different editors, one for kind of each need. Trevor Williams, who's the kind of day-to-day editor of writing civil sites. He is a journalist. He is the editor of Global Atlanta. And importantly, he grew up in the church, right? I mean, you grew up in church, right? Mm-hmm. Churches are a foundational cornerstone to Sweet Auburn. I didn't grow up in a church. I grew up in New Orleans, which is another form of a church, and it's very Catholic, but that's not like growing up in a church. So how am I going to really write about and share what it's like to grow up in a church, or even know some of the language or the protocol or the type of nuanced information without having an editor like Trevor? I could not have done it. Or if I could have, it would have taken a lot longer and not been as good. And I still don't think I could have done it. Trevor was incredible. Jackie Royster. Jackie was the dean of the Ivan Allen College when I was a grad student at Georgia Tech. She is a linguist. She's a rhetorical scholar. She is a black woman born in a segregated South who grew up in many ways in Sweet Auburn. She's got many perspectives that I'll never have that are very important to be lent to this history. And then I had a woman named Molly Slavin, who was a Britton Fellow at Georgia Tech, got her PhD at Emory. She now is a professor at Clark Atlanta University. She knows grammar a lot better than me. And she also could help really create and fine-tune a curriculum that's important in this book, elementary, high school, college. Because I mentioned earlier, like, the book being in the hands of students is vitally important, but they're not just going to pick it up and read it like you or I may, right? They're going to have to be assigned the book. Yeah. Then they may have an interest and take it from there. And then there was a woman named Ellen Goldlust from UVA, and she did copy editing after all these other editors and myself worked on this. And when I got this thing back, including it had already gone through the editing at University of Georgia Press, which is top notch, I got back a manuscript that was bright red. And I was like, this is incredible. The book just got better. So I had all that help. And I had...
Let me interject there.
Yeah.
So 8 years.
8 years.
You're meeting every Friday. How much of your time was this, and how did you think about allotment of time between in Kansas real estate, writing this book?
Yeah, I mean, I also during these 8 years, like, I was finishing grad school. I didn't go to grad school till I was 40, late bloomer. Had a company, had a child, married, right? And I did a lot of nights and weekends. I mean, that's what it took. The other primary collaborator and contributor of this book is Clay Kinningham, the illustrator, because the art, and his art is spectacular, and he himself is just like a first-class human being. He has a real innate ability to share an emotion through a drawing. Not easy.
And then how do you think about success? I mean, you were talking a little bit about what you wanted the book to be used for before we started recording. Did you have predefined goals? Are there numbers that you want to see? Is it more conceptual? Like, what does success look like?
Yeah. I mean, so 2 goals. Personal goal, which is civil sites as a connection point, meet people, have conversation. The second goal is for the book itself, which is to get it in the hands of students, ideally for free. Because you know, the students are the ones who will make it happen, frankly. You know, they have the energy, they've got the runway, they have their own, you know, time and place. And that's proven out throughout history. But this, it would be really hard for a tremendous amount of people to go and bring this history together. And so I hope that Civil Sites is very helpful with this part of the mission, because it makes it into a resource. And I'm proud to be able to say that it is the definitive, or a definitive at a bare minimum, history of Sweet Auburn. It's a hard history to go find because, you know, think about it. When a lot of this history was taking place, segregation was law. It's not like there were a bunch of people being like, let's write about all the accomplishments of the enemy, right? I mean, people in the South were not happy about, you know, basically giving up control and allowing other people to have true equality. And they weren't celebrating them, you know, they were writing other things. So anyway, I'm really happy that the book can be out that way. And this book, by the way, is completely nonpartisan. This is history.
And one of the anecdotes from the book that stuck out was Heron's restaurant, where the first desegregated meal in Atlanta, a lunch counter, or a lunch meal shared rather. And then that, you know, you want as the reader that to be the beginning of the new story and the end of the old story. And except then there was picketers outside that said, boycott this business. They support integration. And the business ultimately went under, I think 20 years later, if I remember correctly. And it's sticky and it's messy. What has it been like for you as a white guy to be the purveyor of this project and to bring it to life?
I was a little bit thoughtful, I guess is a good way to say it, about like how I may be seen or received. I didn't let it like stop me from just like doing my best with this book. And, you know, you mentioned like a lot went into this. This is like documented, cited. These are facts, right? I was able to weave it together to hopefully have a compelling narrative that like makes it into the incredible story it is because of the remarkable people who lived it. But I kind of got over that, although I was still a little timid. And then I did a talk at the Atlanta History Center, and it was a panel, and it included Mike Jordan as the moderator, Black cultural editor at the AJC, a senior editor, Jacqueline Jones Royster, and Ed Bowen with the Prince Hall Masons. And during that talk, I said, you know, raised this question of like, what's a white guy doing writing about this history in Sweet Auburn? And, you know, that's a question that I would imagine comes up. And for one, on a personal level, I think it's an important history, not only to share, but to help preserve. The preservation of the buildings in Sweet Auburn is one thing. It's what do these buildings represent, which is much bigger, right? Because if you don't have them to spark a conversation, how are you going to have the conversation? It's hard to do from an empty parking lot where a building used to be. Anyway, I said this, and then not immediately, but in the following number of questions, each of them said in their own way, like, this has nothing to do with being black or white. This has something to do with a person who cares about and did the work to share history. And I felt like a lot more secure, frankly. It's a great panel, by the way. I want everyone to first listen and or watch this show, and then check out the Atlanta History Center's YouTube, because it's on there. And each of those, moderator Mike, moderator and panelists Jackie and Ed, I mean, they're incredible. their stories are from their life here in Sweet Auburn. And the Prince Hall Masons also just is beginning historic preservation of that building. The Prince Hall Masonic Lodge. That was made possible from another Mason named Congressman John Lewis, who got it included into the Martin Luther King National Historic Park. And it's just, it's fun for me. Like, this is one of the things, like, if I'm on a panel discussion, especially, I'm basically in the audience on stage. So, like, I'm a lifelong learner like you are. That's great and, like, a true benefit to this. But, again, long-winded, but hopefully it answers your question.
Yeah. And how's the reception been? What since publication has gone as hoped, differently than hoped? What stuck out or surprised you?
It's gone really well. Have a lot of support from UGA Press, and I've loved working with them as a publisher. Also love Georgia Humanities. I mean, it's disheartening what's happening to the humanities in this country right now. I believe that defunding the humanities is defunding humanity. I mean, this is a way that we get to understand each other in this life on this planet, socially, culturally, etc. So had a lot of support, continue to have it. And the book sales have been good. Fortunately, like I was never like focused on that.
Yeah. How did you think about format? And I think the flip side in 2025 of a book that's this rich and nuanced and detailed is, will the modern attention span support it? Right.
I'm so happy you're asking this question.
And you said it's only 234 pages, and what ran through my brain when you said that, I was like, what? Font's pretty small. You probably could have stretched this bad boy to 330 if you had wanted to.
Yeah, that's true. Font is a little small.
And I also wondered, I mean, I couldn't help wonder, like, man, this could be like a really cool multimedia project. Like, thinking about AI, you could overlay on the buildings, you could see things pop up, it could be a voiceover. Did y'all think about different formats?
Yeah,
you always
so
go book?
This is a great question. I want to start with like the second part. When I was talking about like the only barrier to entry for preservation is personal passion pursuit, I was thinking about that and clearly like wrote the op-ed about it with Jackie because I believe in this. Civil Sites is laid out to make your own. Like, it's hard to go get this history. Take it. This is a resource. Hopefully you read it and you're inspired and you do your own thing. Like, this just makes it into something that's like more digestible more quickly. There are 105 different additional readings listed in that, which is only about half of what I consumed. There is the curriculum, right? So like if you're a kindergarten teacher, you know, if you're a high school student, if you're, you know, if you're in college and you're looking for something to write about, you know, for your thesis or whatever, like this is a resource. It could be using AI. It could be, you know, projected onto a building. It could be through a tapestry. Museum of Design Atlanta, MODA, right now has an incredible exhibit up called Threads of Change, where it's like telling stories through knitting. I mean, as one quick example, when you walk in, there's a project from this group called the Knitwits. And this was like, you know, a group that would get together and knit, but then in the pandemic, they couldn't be together. But through an act of solidarity, they all decided to knit the exact same thing in a way, but personalize it. And they could pick any year in the history of Atlanta and knit the weather from that year.
Wow.
Things like that, right? Now, that exhibit, by the way, is in part about social justice, and it's also in part about environmental preservation. When you think about climate change, like, we're talking about the preservation of like life on the planet. But in any event, I also wanted this book, and it's not just like writing it in these profile or essay format that accomplishes this goal, but I wanted it to be a history book that was not some burden, right? It's like, this is a history book that's really thoughtfully designed. Graphic design by Brian Simons, Clay Kenningham with the illustrations. The font on the cover is from a guy named Trey Seals, who has a company called Vocal Type, where all of the typefaces are derived from social movements. Like, in reality though, Brent, this is a history book, but it's not one where, like, if you read for 5 minutes, you feel guilty. You just learn something and then you go have dinner and you talk about it with your family or your friends, or you go out and go on a bike ride and go see some of these buildings. So that was that type of structure and format. And I think it makes it a lot more approachable and a lot more fun. I just wrote a history book. I don't want to sit down and read a whole history book, 230 pages or 330 or any, really. And I love history, but it's daunting.
Yeah.
So I have to break up the history that I'm reading. This is already, organized for you. Do you enjoy it that way?
Yeah. I mean, definitely to your point, it's read one or two at a time, because otherwise there is so much in there that you'll gradually lose some of the detail. And it feels like I enjoyed the geographic orientation of it, such that you're kind of navigating your way through the district as well. And it was cool to me, the mix of landmarks that I know. I could have told you, okay, the John Lewis Hero mural, Big Bethel's there, like the things that would come off the top of my head versus things I had never heard of that jumped out too. So I feel like the understanding kind of came with that as I went. It's awesome. And then one more, just curious, for anybody who is listening, and we touched on it some, but just around what it's done for you to explore and indulge and create this passion project. What have you gotten out of this?
I've learned a lot. I've learned, the history, and also I've learned how to write a book and work with people who are part of that process. I've learned about myself that I'm able to do it and to persevere, to set a goal and accomplish it. I've learned that it's a lot better to share it. This would be absolutely no fun if this weren't this collaboration and a shared one. And not just with the collaborators, but it should be shared with everyone. The way that I think about it is it's my book, it's your book, it's everyone's book, it's no one's book. It's just it's a resource about a history of a group of people that changed the world for the better. And that's a lovely thing to share.
Totally. Well, thank you, Gene. Really appreciate you sharing your time and your energy with us today.
Thank you.
That's our show for today. Again, pick up a copy of Civil Sights anywhere you get your books. Highly recommend it for a coffee table, for a gift for somebody. I've learned a lot by reading it, and there's just so much rich nuance in here, so highly recommend. As always, thank you for listening to Macon Atlanta. This is only fun because we get to meet people like Gene and then get to hear from people like you. So if this stirred a question, if you got an idea, anything else, please leave us a comment, subscribe, reply, shoot me a note. We'd love to hear from you about what you think and what you'd like to hear in future episodes. So again, thank you very much. Good luck out there. Y'all are doing great.